Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stack Overflow podcast. Today, we have another episode of Leaders of Code, where we get to chat with tech leaders about the work they're doing, what challenges they're facing, how they build great teams, and how they're meeting the needs of their customers. I'm Phoebe Sajor. I help with the blog and podcast here at Stack Overflow, and I'm joined by our CEO, Prashanth Chandrasekar. How are you today, Prashanth?
I'm well, thank you, Phoebe. Wonderful to be here along with Christina D.
Hey Phoebe, great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you both here today. Today, we're chatting with Christina Dacauaziliqua, Senior Learning Specialist at Morgan Stanley. Christina, thanks so much for sitting down with us today. At the start of the show, we like to give you both a little bit of room to intro yourself to the audience, hear who you are, the work you're doing, and the journey that brought you to the companies that you're at.
For sure, yeah. Thank you again, Phoebe and Christina D, for your time. Obviously, I've been leading Stack Overflow as a CEO since 2019. It's been a wonderful journey to help this community to really embrace new technologies and really help them and serve them, as it relates to our mission, which is all about cultivating community. It's about powering their learning, which is going to be a topic today, and ultimately, of course, unlocking growth in their careers and productivity at work. So, we're obsessed about that mission. We spend a lot of time thinking about that, and that's kind of what brought me to the company, and helping users and companies like Morgan Stanley. Prior to that, I was at a cloud services company leading a lot of high growth organizations focused on AWS and Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. I've worked in finance, I've worked in consulting, so very sort of multidimensional background. But I started out as a software developer, so I come from the background of the user that we serve. I still write code. Actually started writing code again recently, just for fun, a couple of decades after. But yeah, wonderful to be here and serve this amazing community. So thank you again.
Yeah, Christina, would you like to share a little with the audience about yourself?
Yes, so again, my name is Christina Dacauaziliqua. Such a pleasure to be here and tell you a little bit about my kind of trajectory. So I've been with Morgan Stanley for 27 years. So it's pretty much my first formal work as an immigrant to this country. So it was pretty extraordinary. Grew up here within I always joke that, it's interesting because my husband and we both did English was not our first language. And there is this stark difference between my fluency and his. And I say that I owe my fluency to being in those walls of Morgan Stanley here in our headquarters, working with the extraordinary individuals. But a little bit of a trajectory. For the past 2 years, I have taken mobility and joined our talent and development team, focusing on the development, the hire to retire within technology, which has been an incredible journey for the past 2 years, getting as AI is hitting the space and a lot of change. Prior to that, the past 5 years before that, I was involved into getting the firm to adopt Agile as a way of working. And it was an incredible journey to working on the side with our business as well, our technologist. And before that, the second half of my career, at least 27 years, was really focusing on high growth and change management into things that we're doing that leads to transformation into the farm. So I would say that the underlining of my entire career has been how we get people to adopt things that they are not quite ready to adopt just yet. And my educational background, interesting enough, so I started as a teacher back in Brazil, which was incredible. Little did I know that I would be able to be teaching people on my second language and in technology, which is incredible. In school here, I did some, computing and programming. So did some Java, C++, Visual Basic. Definitely always had a very strong affinity with technology. I am an early adopter of things, and I love this space. And I find I am so incredibly grateful and excited to get to do this for a living. So it's incredible. As I mentioned, again, first generation college graduate, an immigrant from a disadvantaged background, socioeconomically. I thrive in the world of possibilities, and this is incredible. So it's really great.
Amazing. Amazing. What a wonderful background, Christina. I did not realize that you're a fellow immigrant. We have another thing too. That's another thing that's common between us. And, totally appreciate the journey that you've been on. I empathize with it and understand it very deeply. So amazing to have you here. Obviously, maybe it's a good time to sort of transition into our and just more generally into our conversation, I would say, you folks Morgan Stanley's been an amazing customer of ours for many years. So thank you again for your partnership over the past several years on our Stack Overflow internal, or Stack Overflow, formerly known as Stack Overflow for Teams, which is the internal version of Stack Overflow that's used, with thousands of companies, or by thousands of companies around the world. So, really just you started talking about, your own learning journey and the fact that you've been on that, and how you're really trying to introduce newer technologies to, your colleagues at Morgan Stanley. And of course, we hope to play a role there always. But just curious about, there's so much changing, Christina, in the world today. There's a tremendous number of changes and new things to learn. And, even the folks who are most, sort of folks who keep up on all the AI developments and all the things that are happening today are finding it difficult to sort of just keep up with all the new things to learn. And also, like, the paradigms for what you learn are also changing, like, very, very quickly, because certain things are becoming, less, let's call it, less important in some ways. And so I'm just curious, what are the biggest challenges at Morgan Stanley as you navigate this extremely fast pace, as you're responsible for learning and development? Like, that's a huge, huge thing to unravel.
It's such a great question and super relevant, right? So full disclosure, I'm probably biased, right? Let's say that. But Morgan Stanley is where innovators come to work on trailblazing technology. Not super different in terms of things are always changing. We have a rigorous regulatory environment, always the type of things that we do. Definitely a premier company with a lot of focus on clients and privacy. So in a global market. So I think a fast-paced environment has always been what we dwell, right? And so innovation and complexity is truly inherited part of the equation now, not only for us, but for the entire industry, but something that, again, I don't think it's super novel within the space. What I know for sure is that when you talk about continuous education on a fast-paced environment, we are always experimenting and identifying ways by which, how and can we get the learning to really take root where outside of the classroom, but at the desk, right? Where 70% the learning occurs is on the flow of the work and on the job, and capturing in a way that is thoughtful and relevant for the future, and hopefully somewhat can self-deprecate over time. It's paramount. But more than capturing, people development, it's fascinating because we are always battling this forget curve, right? Which basically you learn something and immediately, if you don't keep on practicing, you start forgetting. And so having this partnership of ours is really interesting. And we'll talk more about it, but it's this whole idea of using the knowledge and start asking questions. Right. So I learn something, and then all of a sudden I go to a place where I'm searching for answers or I'm asking questions. But even better, I'm answering questions, which is validate the learning that I have done, right? Or not. And then using that information to solve problems, which further establishes and reinforces learning.
Mm-hmm.
So having spaces where I do that in a way that has a framework around it incredibly helps development. And that's what really, and I think that we have something here that is special.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful to hear that. And that makes a lot of sense because, a big believer in experiential learning and, like, learning by doing, and really learning by asking good questions ultimately, right? We've been, advocating for that for a very long time, which is like the quality of your questions actually promotes really, really sound learning, because, and that's why we have such a high bar historically had a high bar on our public platform, where people, ask very specific types of questions and have to be very careful about what kind of questions they ask versus sort of, let's say, poorly worded questions. So even though now we're opening up multiple kind of ways for people to ask more general questions, so we can sort of help them, and it's less of an abrupt experience, but that makes a lot of sense.
But when you do that, when you're helping them to ask better questions. So, which I think it's a wonderful, durable skill. So I thank you for that.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Yeah, I think I think it was quite a product of our founders back in the day, thinking about what constitutes really good knowledge versus just discussion, which is a different. There's room for discussion, but it's a different thing altogether. So that makes a lot of sense. The other thing I was going to ask you is around productivity. When you think about on the same dimension of like when so much is learning, so much is happening and people have to learn so much. How do people at Morgan Stanley stay productive in this constantly changing environment? Just in obviously we play a little bit of a role there, but I'm curious about how do people keep the latest and greatest, not get interrupted? How do they learn in the flow of their work? What could you explain a little bit more about that? Because productivity obviously is important in the age that we live in, and I'm sure there are multiple technology initiatives and other things that you folks are working on, obviously. So we would love to learn at whatever level you're able to talk about it.
I love what you spoke about your founders, right? And I'm very grateful for our founders here too. We are at our core, a 90 years old company that keeps evolving, of course, because in order to be relevant into the market, when you're 90 years old, you really need to evolve. We do have a very strong apprenticeship practice, and I think that is key, right? Ultimately, there is an element of humans. And another thing that really helps, you spoke about your values and your mission. Ours too, I believe, it really supports that for our employees, which is, again, doing the right thing, leading with exceptional ideas, putting our clients first, committing to diversity and inclusion and giving back. And with my people engineer bias, if I call it, each one of those values really propel learning and human growth in a very tangible way. And it really helps because we have that carved into our walls in every part of the firm and all the various locations where we are at. And exposure, that constant exposure, truly facilitates the learning and keeps people focused on the important things and without getting too distracted by what may not be as core and important. So having that, I think that, as you said, in the same way that is important for from your founders and ours, that's important. So that is a little bit of a high level, but on a more granular, right? When you think about it, how does that translate into more tangible? There is a lot of conversations, and we are very intentional in bringing our staff together. So you do have this strong apprenticeship model where a lot of times people are working side by side and doing the work in pairs and together and pushing that forward. But also you have an element of fireside chats and panels and partnering with a number of internal and external partners to ensure that you foster that connectivity as you go along.
Yes, that makes a ton of sense. Certainly, I think living by core values, I think, is a great kind of guiding light to make sure that people ultimately focus on what is important, especially as they make all sorts of decisions are made on a daily basis. Of course, what do we not only what do we focus on, what do we learn, all those sort of things. I think they follow not only core values but of course strategic priorities that we all set for our companies or our groups. So I'm curious, some of the key strategic initiatives that you've implemented to foster learning and enhance productivity within Morgan Stanley, Christina, especially given like your teams are so distributed all around the world. I mean, that's a fascinating element because you're a very large organization. So just curious how, what you've driven over the past year or so.
Oh, I love that. So, listen, we have a very clear strategy in terms of technology within the space, and I don't think anything in it will be a tremendous surprise. But the one that really aligns with our space is talent and engineering excellence, which is something that we align very well with, and there are various pillars associated with it. And and we have also said that this is no longer a yearly strategy, but it's something that is multi-year, and we have very specific guidelines and metrics associated with it that we track with discipline and celebrate too, the wins as we go along, which I think is just as important in helping our entire staff to understand the work that they are doing and how it connects with that. So for the learning that I do, so curricula that I develop, we're very intentional in ensuring that we're integrating that strategy nuance within it and helping to create that connection, right, for everyone. So they can be very very clear that when you come to training, we call it working. And you are here to ensure that you're utilizing that this knowledge will help you to deliver exceptional solutions to our clients.
Right.
So we're very intentional onto that, as opposed to just saying, oh, it's training. I think that language and ensuring that you guide your staff onto it with clarity is so key.
Right. Amazing. Amazing. It reminds me so much of the intentionality point you're making is very, very sort of, it's relevant, and also it intersects exactly with what we do inside our company. I think we've got an amazing people and culture team that's led by our chief people officer, Debbie Shotwell, and we have a learning officer who's Susan Sarpa, who leads that. And very, very deliberately and intentionally, we have set up on our end, something called Learn, Share, and Grow Days at our company. So one of our core values literally is learn, share, and grow, so LSG. And so every month we actually carve out 4 hours for people for that, basically their own individual development, their self-focused development. And there's a whole bunch of obviously curricula like you're mentioning that's made available to them based on their skills, which is also automatically sent their way using the platform. We obviously use our own product, Stack Overflow internal.
Good job.
You know,
Very good job. Yes.
for their learning. So people use that platform to self-learn. And then every quarter, we actually carve out an entire day for company-wide training, which is a one LSG day for that. We carve out another day for department-specific training. So there's a very, to use your word exactly, intentional approach to saying, look, when you're in the middle of running, your team, or in the middle of, launching a new product, etc., all that is, of course, a learning experience, but you do need to carve out time, deliberate time, but in a very intentional way to actually focus on learning almost in a dedicated fashion. I think it's an underemphasized concept in most companies. And I think, people just assume, you learn, and, learning is always continuous, as you're aware. And so even our own product actually is to say that we're a dynamic knowledge-based Stack Overflow internal. So constantly things are moving, and constantly things are people are asking questions, and people are constantly learning. So I think it's in that same spirit. Awesome. Okay, well, so maybe Christina, moving to a little bit of some of the operational elements of how you manage your programs. I'm curious, how do you make sure that these programs and initiatives remain impactful over time? You mentioned they may not be sort of 1 year goals; they may be sort of a multi-year sort of strategic initiative. So how do you do that to make sure they keep staying relevant and impactful? And especially given, again, Morgan Stanley is so huge. It's such a large organization. There's so much, the requirements, I'm sure, are sort of infinite. So I'm just curious how you do that.
We definitely don't do it alone. We have, an incredible cadre, an extraordinary cadre of partners, distinguished engineers that we work very closely with and ensure that we are, again, cutting through the noise and our laser focus into what is critical and not causing distraction within a word that is full of that, and really ensuring that we're creating that segmentation of the content and the information and the knowledge that goes out to the folks. So that is an absolute, is that partnership. We have a learning council whereby the majority, like half of the folks that are part of that, are distinguished engineers, are people that are exceptional within their spaces, creating, and who are incredibly active, and practitioners within the firm, creating profitability, impact, often not only internal but external too, because we do have a tremendous participation on open source, for example, right? We're partners onto that. So it is a learning culture to a great extent. And again, remember that giving back aspect of it, right? So that is part of our culture. That includes all encompassing. So it's truly, we view that as active members of community.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why I'm here too, right? This is the way for us to ensure that we're actively participating on community and sharing our experiences and hopefully bettering to it. So within that scope, again, a rigorous learning council. We ensure, we definitely are constantly evaluating our programs to ensure that they're relevant, impactful, timely, and then it's an ongoing iterative exercise into the portfolio.
I think it marries pretty closely with our own thought process on, we've identified like a set of competencies across the company, across various roles, and also durable skills that we expect, that we actually call them stack skills. That's what they're called. So there's like this foundation of things everybody needs to have. And that's everybody's on that journey, throughout their time here. And so it's kind of this, starting with the letter A all the way through Z, but you don't have to get all that done in year one. You're on your way and you're continuously progressing, and that applies to everybody. Everybody needs to learn continuously. So I think it's that makes a lot of sense, because I was just thinking about your just sort of multi-dimensional nature of your the ultimate end customer that you're serving inside Morgan Stanley, and how diverse that must be across. There's a lot of roles to map, a lot of things to probably consider to make sure you're delivering exactly what they want, right, in their own journeys.
What they need.
Yes, exactly what they need, especially because they may not even realize that that's what is required, right, as they keep progressing.
I think one aspect of that I think that is great that I get to do is nothing brings me more joy than helping people to be successful, right? And when you're in an environment where you have high performing individuals, it's such a joy. It's a different. I have taught illiterate adults in Brazil, right? It's a different, like it's a comparing, contrasting. It's a very different type of environment. So I know how privileged I am to be in an environment where you have the best minds in the industry doing incredible things. So, which in some cases makes the job easier to a great extent. Although there is a level of complexity, but it's easier when you're dealing with people that are on the top of the line, and basically you really need to focus on to what is the added value,
Right,
right?
right,
Very
right.
quickly.
Maybe as a follow up to that point, you mentioned that you work with a ton of technology partners like us to sort of enable this kind of journey you're describing. You talked a lot about sort of human to human connections, people connecting with each other, bringing people together very deliberately. How do you think about kind of like the balance of the human touch, in the organization where you're actually bringing people together, and the technology that you're using, and for what reasons do you use the technology? How do you scale what you're doing? And can you speak a little bit more about that?
Oh my goodness, listen, I wish that, yes, I can talk about it, but I tell you, this is the part that excites me the most because I am not satisfied with how much we're doing, if that makes sense.
Of course,
And
yeah.
I believe that this is the part of AI that if there is a space, I think there are two industries that will be so benefited by AI, and everyone, there will be disruption, but there are two of them that I think they're ripe for, and that would be healthcare and education, right? And I believe that with AI, we will be able to reach this thing, which is personalization, right? And so that, and in some instances, be able to be many step closer. It's not going to replace by any means the human connectivity, but the ability to be able to personalize is going to be extraordinary and allow us to scale in a way that we're never able to do it before, right? So, for instance, there is technology out there that allows us to basically create an experience, let's say a skill that's very important in technology, right? And something that you can relate to it is gaining buy-in, like because everything is an element of gaining buy-in. So imagine to be able to create something that's interactive, and then it asks you, okay, Prashanth, you took the training, now what's next? And then you go, well, give me a client that is difficult, and then allow me to practice, right? My skill set, one of those durable skills in technology, right? Of your ability of being able to gain buy-in. The personalization aspect of it is going to be incredible. And then the other piece is predictive analytics. So those are the two things that I believe that I am here for it, right? I am so excited that I think I'm going to be able to see that and be part of it and implement. And it's extraordinary.
Yeah, so excited to hear that, and it relates very much to a lot of obviously what we build as a company, and with our Stack internal product. I think we we've seen so many use cases where people are leveraging it in a way that is truly scaling that personalization point that you're making. So it's a combination of effectively humans and AI coming together on the platform by leveraging the best of what AI does, which is, for example, personalization is one amazing output of it. Search functionality, semantic search, all the things that we've now learned about and use. But even the context of like learning about what is sort of the exchange of information happening across the company around when people are learning. So, for example, one of the most popular analytics dashboards, to your point, that is used by our customers is something that we affectionately call the sea urchin diagram. In fact, when you may want to look it up in your own Stack internal portal if you haven't seen it. But it's this beautiful graph that shows what questions are being asked by what people across which parts of the organization. So less individuals, but more like departments. And you'd be fascinated to see the types of folks asking certain questions and the types of folks answering certain questions across the organization. And having sort of a map of that sort of gives you the ability to say, okay, the learning is actually very, very advanced on this topic in this area. And maybe this organization needs a little bit more focus and help to sort of, ultimately get up to speed. And that's why it's a continuous process. So it is like a graph that looks like a living, breathing entity. It's like a universe, right? It's like the stars are moving around. In this case, the linkages between the various teams are moving around. So it's a beautiful chart. I'd encourage you to go take a look at it across Morgan Stanley because again, you have kind of an at mass, at scale.
Prashanth, I want that across everything we do.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think I'm gonna get to see that.
Yes. Exactly. It gives you a fantastic perspective. So
Yes,
wonderful.
absolutely. Yeah, and I want more. I think the predictive analytics aspect of it too is incredible because it's similar to the study that I remember. I think IBM did it whereby they could see that the children that had high scores in reading would do incredibly well in algebra. It was not something that it was completely intuitive, but I think that with things such as what you just described, and as we explore more at scale, like connecting all parts of it, I think we'll be able to unlock, for me, is the unlocking of the full human potential.
Yes. 100%. That's all we're all here to do that. Realize our full potentials.
Yes.
That's an amazing point. All right, maybe to round it out, maybe one sort of question around, in the spirit of realizing the full potential, what do you think about like the mindset and the practices that leaders should adopt to, sort of embed this continuous learning point we've made now a few times on this podcast into their teams? Like how do we, what exactly should they be doing and thinking about?
Well, there are three things that, listen, and I think in the context of each environment and your culture and whatever, right, in the context of it, but and your experiences and challenges. But I think there are three things that I particularly see really impactful results. So there are three things: connecting success with learning in a very intentional way. I think sometimes, the success is viewed in isolation as if it's something that comes out of nowhere. And we really need to create that dialogue of really, yes, it does happen because there is a lot of reflection into lessons learned and wins in a very intentional way. Help the learners, help your staff connect the dots by sharing what you're learning and what are the wins into the process and how the learning has impacted your journey in a varied way. I really think that sharing your habits, often it sparks by a story and a conversation, and we are really driven by storytelling, so and human connection, so I think that is important. Second one, leading by example. What do they see you doing? And I see those things when we bring a leader to talk about, hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and this is how I'm doing, years per cup. And folks want to follow people that are winning and are doing an impact. And what I mean by win is not win by win, but what I mean by that is bringing impactful solutions within the market, within their communities, within the space. That's what I mean by winning, right? They are creating business impact in a meaningful way. So leading by example, what do they see you doing? And one size doesn't fit all. Are you having multimodal solutions? right? And on your catalog of solutions, are there various ways by which you're doing that? And I think that also taking into account the different levels of maturity of the people you're dealing with, maturity meaning where they are in their journey, right? So having the multi-model. So those are the three things: connecting success with learning, making that very clear, leading by example, and knowing that you need a multimodal solution because folks are in different types on their journey.
I love your leading by example point. It links very much to the LSG, or the learn, share, and grow core value that I mentioned. So we speak a lot about the growth mindset inside our company, and this is I'm sure you've read the book Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, who's an amazing author.
Absolutely.
And I often share that with our stackers because it's irrespective of where you are in your career, you're obviously on this sort of continuous learning journey. So if you have the right mindset that you are on this sort of continuous growth journey, then you're never going to feel defensive about feedback, the fact that you didn't learn something the first time. You're constantly moving forward, right? And you're constantly sort of using it to, as you said, unlock your full potential. So I think it's a wonderful journey for folks, and we're definitely we're very committed to doing that for our community members. A lot of what we do now on stackoverflow.com, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, is to unlock growth, as in personal growth, career growth, growth in their career, in their workplaces, all through powering their learning and, of course, cultivating community. And we do that through this, huge knowledge base and community of tens of millions of people who are helping each other out truly through the goodness of their heart, looking to share and help each other out. So it's wonderful. Well, Christina, thank you so much. It's been amazing to chat with you and really reconnect, and looking forward to partnering with you on this continuous journey in the future. So talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions or suggestions for guests for the podcast, you can email us at podcast@stackoverflow.com.
You can find me, Prashanth Chandrasekar, on LinkedIn, just under my name, or on X under my name as well.
And I can be found on LinkedIn under my name. And just a last thought. Ultimately, I have the privilege of working with and knowing a lot of folks that are well in their 90s. Being a lifelong learner is the way to go in life. So,
Well said, Christina.
Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Leaders of Code.